Hello, this is Jason Morgan or J. Lloyd Morgan vlog on March 22nd. It's about noon. It's a Sunday today. Just kind of an update of what's going on in the world. So apparently the United States, as of right now, has the third most cases of the COVID-19 virus, with New York leading the way that New York does with, I think, 11,000 cases. I mentioned, I think, in my previous vlog that New York and California had kind of been on lockdown. From what I read, that two other states have joined them, which are Connecticut and New Jersey, which is not surprising because Connecticut and New Jersey are really close to New York. In North Carolina, I think they said that we have almost 300 cases of COVID-19 right now. So that's what's going on as far as the world goes. I did also see that Southwest Airlines is now canceled like a fourth of their flights, simply because there's just not people flying. And that's not unexpected, I guess, but it's kind of what's going on in the world. Personally, what's going on here is, so it's Sunday. I'm an active churchgoer. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we are advised to stay home. We're not having church services in buildings. We are having it really together as a family, per the direction of the church. And so we'll be having that here in about half an hour or so with my family. We'll have a little worship service. So it's interesting how we're not completely, shut down from things we're doing. We're just kind of doing them a different way. So those are the major things. Again, I worked quite a bit last night on getting stuff ready for tomorrow, which is the first day of remote instruction for my full-time gig. With my part-time gig, I'm getting several emails from students that are asking for extensions and such, because of the challenges they're facing, and the schools that in those cases have been really good about extending different policies, but it's going to be a lot of administrative work trying to keep track of everybody and their special circumstances and needs. And I'm not complaining. That's just part of the job, and I want to help out people I can the very best possible. But when you have so many people asking for special requests, it definitely adds to the already quite heavy load that we're dealing with. As far as something I touched on yesterday, the concept of normalcy, and just kind of relating it back to 9/11. So I'll give the quick 30-second or maybe 2-minute version of my experience in 9/11. So I was working as an operations manager at News 12 Connecticut, which is in Norwalk, which is about 40 miles away from New York City. And it was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd gone into work early that morning with the intent that I was going to come home that afternoon. We had a above ground pool in our backyard that needed to be kind of winterized because we were done with the summer. And I told my wife, yeah, I'm going to be home early to be able to work on the pool. So I had gone in early, and I was meeting with one of my directors. They would just finish their morning newscasts, and we get this knock on the door of my office and saying, hey, we need to go live because a small plane crashed into one of the buildings in New York. And we're like, how can you not, how could you possibly do that? Whatever. So we got a reporter. We got an anchor out on the set. We did our live animation, and we didn't really have any information aside from what we were basically hearing. And there were cameras all over New York City that we could tap into feeds, so we could pull up all these different feeds on our screen, and we could see different things. And we realized it was one of the World Trade Center towers that had been hit. And when we first looked at it, it was like, wow, that's a lot of smoke. That's a lot of damage for a little plane. We had no idea what was going on. There's a sense of uneasiness happening. And, the anchor, again, they had limited information. They were just they didn't have a script. They were just kind of ad-libbing what was going on. They weren't making stuff up, but they were just saying, this is what we know, this is what we can see. And while we were doing this, then we see the second plane hit. And there's no, it's a big plane. And we recognized, okay, this is not an accident. And I think that moment it became very real to everybody that something bad was going on. And so pandemonium started happening. Then we hear, a little while later that a plane was crashed into the Pentagon. We hear a little while later that a plane had crashed into a field in Philadelphia. And we hear all the planes have been grounded. We've gone live. We're now live. We're live, just off script. We're just doing whatever we can, whatever information we have at any given time. And we basically stayed live. So that was a Tuesday afternoon. We stayed live pretty much all week, the rest of the week. I mean, we did kind of eventually record some things that we would run overnight. But as that unfolded, at that time, during that day of 9/11 itself, it was frightening because we had no idea. We had no concept of when this was going to end and how big of an impact it was going to have. I tried to call home many times and I couldn't because all the lines were busy. I didn't know if I was going to see my family again. I lived about 20 miles away, but the traffic in New York is ridiculous, and I couldn't leave. It was my job to stay there. And I just remember being just overwhelmed and exhausted. And one kind of interesting story is that later that day on 9/11, later that day in the afternoon, when things started to settle down a little bit and there was no more plane crashes, we had a report of a man standing on a bridge above a freeway. And and he was standing there holding an American flag. And, he wasn't threatening to jump or anything like this, but, with all our news crews out, somebody had seen him and they went to interview him. And they asked him, and they said, "What are you doing?" And he says, he had served in the military. And he said, "I just had to do something, because, America was under attack." Now, and then there's this huge sense of patriotism that followed after that, which is, died out quite a bit, frankly. But there was, within the next few weeks, a real sense of wanting to return to normal activities. What was okay, what was safe, whatever. I remember there was like some sort of big event where, for New York, and like the members of Saturday Night Live, they were on stage and they asked the mayor at the time, I think it was Giuliani, which he's kind of had a different future, since then. But they asked him, they said, "Can we be funny now?" And his response was, why start now? I mean, that was a joke. But the idea of when was it okay to return to normalcy? And it took time. There was a lot that happened after that for quite a while before we kind of felt, a little more safe on things. It was weird how our newscast all of a sudden started shifting over to everything was 9/11. Everything was this, based on this. All the shift went over to that, even though other stuff was happening in the world. I mean, that was kind of just the way that it went. And that's kind of what we see now. There's a lot of news is all about the COVID-19, even though there's other things happening in the world. After the after effects for that were, as I kind of mentioned yesterday, was that we saw, an upgrade in security as far as how they did airlines, and there's a whole bunch of things. There was a Patriot Act that came out, and a whole bunch of other things that came out based on 9/11 to try to keep us, safer as a country. How effective were they? Well, we haven't had any attacks like that since. Is it a direct relation of what was done? I can't say. Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of things that probably happen behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. The most obvious things are going to the airport now and seeing things. So, as I, again, noted in my previous blog, I'm curious to see how this will play out. I guess my biggest questions right now is, as of right now, we don't really have a time frame of when things are going to end. Hopefully, I think everyone's looking really towards the fall as an opportunity to kind of get back to normal, like when school starts back up again. I think a lot of people have kind of written off the rest of the school year, academic school year, and probably most of the summer as far as being able to do too much. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And right now, we're seeing more of a ramp up as far as number of people getting, infected. One final side note, not really a side note, but on a personal thing. So my mother, who's in an assisted living home in Utah, she's not allowed to leave her room, which is for the best. But she's very much a social butterfly, and she loves to be around people, and so it's been really hard on her. So I was able to call and talk to her today, and she's suffering from some so dementia and some Alzheimer's. So the conversations are usually not very long. She just likes to hear people's voices. And so, but it's still the safest place for her to be, is to be isolated, and there's no one sick in her place. So I'll probably be calling her every day. And again, it's just one of those things where what else can I do at that time? So those are my thoughts for Sunday, March the 22nd, 2020, on the COVID thing.